This time in our community,
10% of New Brunswick and 20% of Fredericton households are facing housing insecurity.
David Coon wants to introduce you to the challenges we are facing in our community, the people that are working to solve these challenges, and what we can do to support them. Because if we, as a community, don't help each other, then who will?
Here's the problem. Housing and associated costs have been increasing, while income security has been decreasing. Today, 10% of New Brunswick and 20% of Fredericton households are facing housing insecurity. As a consequence, it is becoming more difficult to escape poverty and increasingly easier to fall into homelessness. So what's the holdup? There aren't enough rent subsidies, affordable units, and portable rent supplements to meet the need of low-income New Brunswickers. Currently, there are around 6,000 people in New Brunswick and over 1,000 in Fredericton on the NB housing list waiting for a subsidized apartment.
My name's Taeyeon. I'm David Coon's constituency coordinator. The bulk of people who come to see us are looking for help with housing insecurity, homelessness. Housing insecurity is when you're paying more than 30% of your income on housing, and a lot of people are paying more than 50% of their income on housing. If you find yourself in a housing crisis, like getting evicted, you have very few options. If you're a family, there are no family shelters. So if you need to go into a shelter, you'd get split up. The father would go to the men's shelter, the mother to the women's shelter, and the children would go into foster care. One family I know of were evicted, and ultimately they ended up camping out in the woods until they could find an apartment they could afford. But they couldn't find one that would accommodate all of them and their pets. So the mother and children stayed in an apartment eventually, but the father stayed in the camp with the dog through the winter, and they stayed in that situation for a long time. Every summer, there's a tent city by the river in Fredericton of people who are homeless and who are living in tents through the summer. By winter, most of those tents are gone, but there are still some people who are rough sleeping in tents, even in the winter. There are a lot of families who face the possibility of eviction every month because they simply don't have enough income to pay their full rent and their power bill and their food. And so often they fall behind on rent or power, or something has to give. Housing is more than just shelter. Having safe, secure, affordable housing is good for a person's overall well-being, for their health, for education, for economic security, for the community. It's not just good for the individual person, but the whole community benefits when everyone has secure, safe, and affordable housing. So it's good for the whole province.
In 2010, the provincial government released a housing strategy that was designed to alleviate housing insecurity. The 5-year plan was called Hope is a Home, but it was never fully implemented, so it hasn't met its goals or objectives. In fact, 10% of New Brunswickers now are housing insecure. 6,000 people are on the waiting list to receive subsidized housing. So what do? Well, government needs to build more spaces. It needs to build more public housing that it owns and operates, and it needs to support nonprofit organizations to do the same.